Back in the third block of the Cultural Hall, Clinton Joe Anderson. I think he just goes by Joe, but print he goes by Clinton. And he's the author of a book that you can get now on Amazon.com. How Can You Possibly Be a Mormon and a Democrat?
And Deseret Book.
And a Deseret Book.
Yes.
You're right. Let me not discount.
Yes, and various LDS bookstores around, all over.
Possibly Siegel. Book
Not
and tape.
Siegel yet.
Not Siegel. Okay.
No,
What is their problem?
That's the big one. You
Yeah,
nail
yeah.
down Siegel Book and Tape, you're golden.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the political climate here in the United States right now. What do you think? Where are we at?
It's interesting.
That's a broad question.
Well, from an LDS perspective, it's really fun, actually. I mean, whether Frommie makes it, it's even more interesting. But for now, at least, the buzz is in the air, and people have questions, and people care, about what does it mean to be a Mormon,
Do you think that Romney's Mormonism will impact whether or not he's able to win, or
Yes.
even to become the nominee? And you just said yes, so that answers that question. How?
The evangelicals.
So do you think Romney is not conservative enough for the evangelicals?
He's not non-Mormon enough for the evangelicals.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with his politics, but you believe it to be just
The fact that
Mostly,
he's a
yeah.
Mormon.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just... But, at the end of the day, then there's Obama. But no, they actually, even then, a lot of them seem...
Tight about it.
Yeah.
So then, let's talk about the political climate now. I mean, you're looking at how the world is now. There are all sorts of, just partisan. It's either Republican, it's Democrat. What do people need to do? What do we need to do?
Realize that things are better than they ever have been.
How so?
Really?
Well, actually, there's a good quote by Obama in The Audacity of Hope. I quoted it somewhere, but he said, "You know what? When I think about Nelson Mandela and people getting Tiananmen Square and the gulags, I'm thinking getting called names doesn't seem so bad. So, more or less, I mean, things are better. Brian Lamb, the guy who started C-SPAN. He had somebody ask him, what do you think about the polarization? And he said, you know what? I don't think we're as polarized as people think. 100 years ago, we were killing each other over things, maybe 200 years ago. But we've gotten more civilized. I mean, they're still backbiting. They're still cheating. They're still mudslinging. But at least people know the game, and it isn't a matter of, I'm going to kill that guy, like in the Middle Ages or whatever. So we've gotten better. We're more civilized than we have been. So at least that's good news.
But yet there's still this stigma about being Mormon and being Democrat. So how do we get past it?
Well, I didn't just play these two parts. I made arguments on both sides that made sense to me, and so they make sense to conservatives. And they just say, you know what, this didn't change my mind politically,
Right.
but I'm just not near as bitter, and I care a little bit less about politics. And I'm like, that was what I was going for, all right.
So your point is to just have people not care as much about the whole thing?
I want to show that there is good reason to care, okay? But at the end of the day, it is love thy neighbor as thyself. So, but there's far too much bitterness. I just want to lift the burden of bitterness off people's shoulders. So,
was there anything that, as you're writing, because you said you explore not only the very right conservative end of things, but also the very leftist, very liberal. Was there anything that, as you were writing, you kind of went, maybe?
Yes.
They have a point.
Yes,
Maybe the liberals
yes,
have a point.
yes,
Expound.
absolutely.
What was one of those things?
Since I was able to take Harry Reid's position on abortion, which was pro-life, it was fun. I found a bill, for example, that he and Hillary Clinton sponsored that was meant to reduce abortions. But because it gave money to people that were pro-choice themselves, but it gave money to groups
and organizations.
But
Right.
none of the money went to abortions. No Republican voted for it at all. And I kind of thought, you know what? We can want to outlaw abortion forever, but what about reducing it in the meantime?
Sure.
And here's a guy who votes pro-life every single time, Harry Reid does, and he was given a hard time when he was first in Congress or the legislature or whatever. And who was it? Feminist Democrat McCluskey came to his defense and said, hey, he's voting his conscience. And since then, they haven't, he's always voted pro-life. So there's something else there. But he's been working to reduce abortions in the meantime. So in essence, I didn't want one side to win. I really wanted a tie. But I'm afraid that on the abortion chapter, the Democrat side, I think, won. So keep that in mind. Do you want to reduce it as well as outlaw it?
Sure.
Interesting.
So, and as far as the environment chapter, I think my views have broadened. as opposed
So
to
as far
moderated.
as far as global warming,
I did not mention global warming.
You didn't mention
no,
it at all.
I
So
thought that
what
would
part
be
of environment
that would
do
be
you get
boring.
into then?
Loss of habitat.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, I cover Easter Islands. Great stuff. Pollution laws pollution laws in the 1960s have cleaned quite a few things up here. So anyway, at least those two.
So would you agree then that how could you possibly be a strict Mormon or a strict Democrat? Because it's my personal belief that even though people will affiliate themselves obviously with the church, that there's such varying degrees of Mormonism that I think that there's also such varying degrees of Democratism, I
Yes.
guess, and Republicanism.
Yeah.
I don't think that anyone within the Mormon church is strictly Mormon. You know what I'm saying? I think that they've got one thing that they go, okay,
Yeah,
but maybe
absolutely.
not that. And similarly with political parties.
Oh yeah, there's. I love the stories about leaders in the church disagreeing. The best one is by far Reed Smoot versus the first presidency. Okay, I used to have that in the book. Like I said, it was twice as long, and I split it into two books. The second half, I haven't figured out the title for it, but in it, it talks about Reed Smoot versus the first presidency, literally, and he's the senator, okay, for Utah.
Okay.
And they're talking about the League of Nations, and I mean, almost everyone on the Quorum of the 12 in the first presidency, not everyone, there were 2 or 3 exceptions, they're in support of the League of Nations, okay? But Reed Smoot in the end just was, I can't vote against my conscience. And in the end, he didn't support it, and it failed in part because of his vote. But the wonderful lesson there is, in the end, there were no repercussions because of this,
Right, because he decided to vote his conscience. The
right.
church didn't come after him.
Or even other people who were in agreement with him. I think maybe David O. McKay was one of them, but I can't remember. I don't want to say who else was, but these people who were then, appointed to the first presidency and so on and so forth. It was just, hey, we disagreed, and now we're time to move on. So that's a great story there.
So your hope, again, just to kind of reiterate what we've already said, your hope is to, with the book, just kind of explain to everyone that maybe politics don't matter as much?
No, I don't want to say that. I want people to, well, when I say care less about politics,
Okay.
it means, your kid might want to play ball with you, and you're sitting in there yelling at the TV. Or, well, I used to do that at least.
Yeah.
So, but your kid's there. So relax a little bit and realize that God's in charge. And there's other things to worry about. There really is.
Right.
If we have the news on all day, where do you see your own life there? The news is right there in front of you with your family around you. So that's kind of what I want. There's no need for so much bitterness. We can disagree and then move on. And that's really what I'm trying to get at. So.